Welcome to the Great African Leadership Series, where we feature great inspirational speeches and quotes from African leaders.
Be your host on today's forum. To start on the meeting, we start on with the country spokesperson, Roland Gassam. Can you hear us? You are the first spokesperson for on today's meeting. It's Roland Gassam from Cameroon. Can you hear us, Roland Gassam? Can you unmute yourself?
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Roland. We have 1 minute to present your report for your country. Yes, you can go on, Roland.
Good evening, everyone. The review from 29 October to 5th November 2021. We were glad from our last Zoom call conference and review follow. Moderator Yvonne Duchan, town member and ambassador for their attendance. I love Black people globally take care strongly through technology to protect Black people everywhere and anywhere against racism, xenophobia, and then recommending business in 8 essential categories to build a safe place for Black-owned and Black-friendly. My main point of the week were reporting missed Black people on by relaying the alert post images and huge brothers and sisters to be careful about a non-jobs fair organizer from Arab countries and elsewhere by sharing the voice of voiceless from the particular area. Thereafter, inviting more friends and family members to join the movement to allow BlackPeople.com link on Pan-African class session. COVID-19 update in Cameroon, confirmed cases of 1,438 with 1,731 deaths and a total of 500,363 vaccine doses have been administered. From Cameroon, here is Roland Gassam. I am because you are.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Roland Gassam, for their wonderful report. Next, we have Joel K. Ngetichi from Joel Kentichi, can you? Oh yes, you'll be reporting your reports from Malawi.
Yes, I report on behalf of Malawi.
All right, thank you so much.
I report on behalf of Malawi from Andrew Makombo. Yes.
Yes.
Weekly. You hear me properly?
Yes, we can hear you properly. You can continue for 1 minute to present your report.
Okay, weekly report from 31st October 2021 to 5th November 2021. Weekly activity. The community had some conference meeting where I Love Black People mission is to use technology to protect Black from racism and xenophobia. We had a class session last Zoom with Christopher Mabodera, Dr. Tyrone Wright, and Nana Hakwo, and spokespersons gave report from various countries. Movement needs serious people on a mission to move Pan-African revolution and protect your sisters, brothers globally from racism and xenophobia. I Love Black People used to use technology in the whole world network, especially when traveling in a new environment. Regular newsletter was shared with 8 essential categories: education, legal, finance, beauty, transportation, health, food, and accommodation. Share leaderboard to show who managed to participate in the task. It is our call all of us to
we can't hear you properly, Joel.
Recommend business recommendation in where Black live and doing business. All right. Can I repeat? All right. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Only the last part of your report wasn't clear, but we could hear all your report. Thank you so much, Ambassador Joel, for standing in solidarity with Malawi. On to next, we have Elijah Nyabuti from Kenya. Elijah, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, you can continue.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, yes, you can continue and present your report, Brother Elijah.
Okay, today I'm reporting for Kenya. Good evening, good afternoon, dear members. I am Elijah Nyabuti from Kenya. I'm going to report for Kenya. The report is dated 31st October to 5th November. So the Kenya weekly activities on 30th October 2021, we had a class session with Dr. Tyrone Wright and Nana Senzele. And in our group, members were asked to recommend Black-owned and Black-friendly businesses. The regular newsletter was shared, which highlights on our 8 essential categories. The announcement was made for members to volunteer as ambassadors. Social media accounts were shared, and members were encouraged to follow, like, and comment. Members and ambassadors were encouraged to attend online event which aims on building a global network to help and protect people from racism and xenophobia. And finally, members were asked to prepare and write and submit their weekly reports. The Kenya COVID-19 updates as from 5th November 2021, the total confirmed cases are 253,661. The cumulative fatalities are 5,296. The recoveries are 247,156. Fully vaccinated are 2,724,3 372. Reporting from Kenya, I am Elijah Nyabuti. I am because we are.
Thank you so much, Brother Elijah Nyabuti, for reporting your report for Kenya. We'd like to encourage all our members and ambassadors to write your weekly report and present them on Zoom in each and every Saturday. Thank you once again for joining us. To those who have just joined us, I'm your host for today. My name is Awad. Without wasting much of time, we'd like to welcome our co-founder, Mr. Christopher Mapondera, for today's speech. Mr. Mapondera, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. You can continue and present.
Okay, anyway, my apologies from last week. My system just conked out on me. I really didn't know what happened. It just cut off and I couldn't get back on. Anyway, it's a pleasure to meet with you again every Saturday. I look forward to be sharing some of my ideas and views and experiences, and hoping that some of them you may find them helpful in your own day-to-day lives. I understand, how some of the environment under which we grow up, that at times we don't have those people may mentor us, so people can give us constructive advice. But I think on a platform like this one here, I hope that I can fill in a little bit of that gap as I advise again as to how you or your own individual capacities can navigate the complex lives that we live in now. My subject last week was to discuss understanding ourselves. As I often say that today's Pan-Africanism is at a different level from when our co-founders or founders of Pan-Africanism were, Wow, Kuma, Marcus Garvey and so forth. They were in a different context altogether, and the kind of challenges that they were facing are totally different from some of the challenges that we are facing today. And also, as I may have mentioned, that I want to move Pan-Africanism from looking at it purely from an intellectual point of view, but put it in more practical terms. What does it mean when you say a Pan-Africanist today? One of the things I've encouraged that you must know what's going on in the Pan-African world. That is knowing what is happening to Black people all over the world. What is happening to Black people in Brazil? What is happening to Black people in the Caribbean? What is happening to Black people in Kenya? What is happening to others in South Africa, in West Africa, what have you? Because today we're bombarded with so much misinformation from the Western media. So it's a time that we have to direct our own narrative. We have to tell our own story. We have to interpret our own situations. You can listen to, let me just give an example, for where misinformation has tried one. There's so much fear that if as Black people all over the world, we get together and start collaborating, exchanging ideas, views, and so forth, we become a threat to the colonizers, because they are a minority. They are more than 1.4 billion of us. Now, there's not a single European nation that is anywhere close to what we are. So, by collaborating amongst ourselves, rather than our colonizers look at it as a positive thing, it becomes a threat. So you find that one of the reasons one of the ways they try to separate us is this misinformation. I remember when I first came to the US, I was very much discouraged, to interact with my brothers and sisters here. Said, no, don't go to the Black cell in the neighborhood. It's very, very dangerous there and so forth. But I came from a country where the blacks are a majority. Now I come over here, I try to go to those little pockets, where black people were a majority, that is in the black neighborhoods, but I was discouraged, from interacting there. Same thing happens, when our African American brothers come to Africa, particularly in South Africa and Zimbabwe, or South Africa and Rhodesia at the time. They were made to feel that, well, you know what, our local Africans are still so primitive. You guys are coming from the Western world. You're much better than they are, and so forth and so forth. So that would also try to create that fear, that the African American, when it comes to Africa, is made to feel afraid of interacting with Africans. Whereas Africans, when it comes to America, we're made to fear interacting with our black brothers and sisters in the US. Okay, so that has always continued, and then in the continent itself, you find that some of the wars that we have amongst ourselves are as a result where, say, oh, you're Kikuyu, you're Kalenjini, you guys, you're not supposed to be working together, this, So we end up having these little fights without understanding that, no, at the end of the day, when we are busy fighting each other, these people are busy looting our resources. And this is what is, again, going on now. Any wars you have in Africa today, you find that they are associated with the existence of resources that the Western countries need or want to control. You can tell, like when oil was discovered, every African country where oil was first discovered, it was always followed by some conflict of some sort. People saying, oh, well, oil was discovered in the river state of Nigeria. Therefore, the guys in Kano, you really don't, want to interact with people in the, in the river state and so forth. Then they start creating all these conflicts. But at the end of the day, who is benefiting out of it? They were busy taking our oil out of the ground. Right now in Mozambique, we have the same thing, that they found resources in northern Mozambique, and everybody is trying to move into there. But what have they done? They've created all these artificial walls where, fortunately, the whole SADC region, had to step in and say, okay, we're not going to allow this type of conflict to be generated, amongst ourselves. And the latest I hear that whole insurgent situation in northern Mozambique is under control now. We know that during our liberation movement, it was the same thing too. In Angola, you had a very long standing war between Savimbi and the ruling party there. Again, what was this all about? Angola is one of Africa's biggest oil producers. And they wanted to make sure that there was destabilization, and it created, Jonas Savimbi, a so-called opposition. And, it was a long drawn out war. But the Cubans, who were thinking in a Pan-Africanist mode, saw that the conflict that was happening in Angola was not just a question of the ruling party against the opposition, but it was really something fomented by the external forces to have access to the oil in Angola. But Cuba, being a Pan-Africanist country, came, and assisted. So I'm saying this, that we as Africans on the continent, we must understand the conditions our brothers and sisters in the USA live. You'll hear some snippets of, like the George Floyd situation, which was, publicized internationally. It, revoked the sentiments of people from a wide range, but that was just one incident. But if you take it way back when there was the lynching. Can you imagine, where people were hung and, the whites would come and witness that, and the cheer, because somebody is being hung and so forth. So the brutality against our brothers and sisters here starts from the time when they were taken from Africa and forcibly brought to the US. That brutality has continued on and continues on up until now. So when young Africans, we come to the US, at times when we wish to come here, we feel like, wow, things are so good there. Why should the African Americans complain, that things are so bad for them? It can't be worse than how we have it in Africa and so forth. But again, this is again a result of the misinformation, but it is up to us to understand what conditions our brothers and sisters here live under. As you may also have noticed, that there's a developing trend of some of the brothers and sisters moving to Africa, relocating to Africa. Right now, you still have more going to West Africa because that's where a majority of the people that were brought to the Western world came out through West Africa. But they were not confined only to West Africa. They came from all different parts of Africa to be brought here. But also at the same time, when our brothers come to Africa, at times they don't understand, that how can Africa be so poor when they have all these resources and so forth. It becomes a paradox, that we are the richest continent on earth, and yet we're both the poorest people, on earth as well. But again, it's because at times they may not understand the effects of colonization, the constant domination of our lives, by the colonialists, that the economic institutions, which are run and managed, through these international organizations like the World Bank, IMF, and what have you, and so forth, who put us in a situation where, one, they try to get us involved in all these monetary systems, which really serve the interests of the Western world than they serve the interests of our own countries. You can find that right now, every African government aspires, well, I wish the IMF would do this, I wish the World Bank would do this, and so forth. I don't have anything wrong with that. In a way, it also is a way in which they are giving back everything that they've been looting from us. They're not really giving us aid, but they put it in such a way that they are coming to our aid. They are giving us help, but they're just returning the resources that they took, and they're trying to bring it in another way, as if they're being benevolent. So I have no problem, getting, IMF help, World Bank help, and what have you, because it's our resources that they are giving back to us. Okay, they have, dismantled our own economic systems to the extent that we at times become more dependent on on the handouts they give us, rather than spend more time in developing our own resources for our benefit and so forth. So my message today is that let's take time to understand the circumstances each and every one of us live under. Take time. If you see African American, in your town and what have you, if he's not in a hurry or whatever, I'm sure they'll just be as eager to know, how do people live and so forth. Quite a lot of my friends, when they come to Africa, they say, look, we're not coming there as Africans, as tourists. We're coming there to come and to understand and learn about our people. So living in Africa, we must also try to help them to understand how things go, what are our local customs and so forth, learn them, teach them some of the basic words, to get by, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and so forth. I was watching a video yesterday of an African-American couple that moved to Rwanda. They set up a restaurant there. And they say one of the problems they had that the guys who work for them kept on wanting to call them boss and so forth, and say, no, don't call us bosses. We are partners here. You're working for us, but it doesn't mean, you have to look at me as a boss. Because the concept of boss is when we look at, how we used to look at when white people, when were in power, they always wanted to exert their authority, and then they would want to be referred to as a boss in order to maintain that dominance. Okay, but the fact that you have our brothers coming to Africa, some may have resources not to start some enterprises and so forth. They are not coming in the same way the colonizers came, where it is all planned and everything, but they're coming in because they want to start a new life, but they cannot start that new life in a vacuum. They have to relate to us, that are in the continent. And so it is up to us to, again, teach them our customs, let them understand how we live and so forth and so forth. Now, the second thing is the issue for economic collaboration and economic cooperation between us and those, from the diaspora. As I say, Africa, we have all the resources, but right now, who is dominating the exploitation of those resources? Our former colonizers. But our brothers and sisters in the West, some of them have had access, to know-how, to technology and so forth. So it will make a lot of sense. Like when they come to Africa, they become also a conduit for the transfer of know-how and technology and so forth, which will help us, again, to develop much faster and so forth. So this is my message today. Again, if I can summarize it, that let's know ourselves, know what is happening to your brothers and sisters any part of the world. What is happening in Brazil? You hear so many stories of how Black people who make the majority of people living what they call the favelas, which are really run down, overcrowded areas where Black people live. That has got an issue, an impact on how they live, how they think, and so forth. But how can we help them out? Coming from Africa, some of us may have some skills. Again, skills are not dominated just by those in America or Europe, whatever. But we have also developed a lot of skills in Africa ourselves. We've got Africans, I think I've mentioned, who are involved in every major company in the US, technology company you can think of, Microsoft, Google, AT&T, whichever, areas, you can, excuse me, think about, you've got Africans involved in the development of the COVID vaccines. You've got, Africans that are involved even in the sending of the rockets to the moon, the space industry, you find there's some African engineers there involved and so forth. So we are also making contributions to the Western world, but we also want to see more of our brothers and sisters bringing some of the skills and the know-how that we need in Africa, and through that collaboration, I think we can build the African society that we want. And by African society, I'm saying everything that involves every Black person, no matter where you live. So I'm going to stop over here. If there are any comments or questions, you may ask me from some of the things that I discussed the last time. I didn't manage to finish, or any other subject. I mean, I think I got another 5 minutes, where we can have that dialogue. Okay, thank you so much for listening to me.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Christopher Mapondera. We have a question from Roland Kassam. He's saying, how can we mobilize to put an end to sisters trafficking as slaves nowadays in Arab countries with unfair jobs contracts?
Excuse me, can you go over that question again?
He's saying, how can we mobilize to put an end to sisters trafficking as slaves nowadays in Arab countries with unfair jobs contracts?
Well, I think I'll try to address that issue maybe in the next lesson, the speeches we have. There's been this misalignment, between the Africans and the Arabs. Some of that misalignment, comes from the fact that the northern part of Africa, what we call the Maghreb region, constitutes the Arab sector. And then you've got some of them who are on the so-called Middle East, okay, on the other side of the Mediterranean Ocean. Now, over centuries, there had been the trade between Africa and the Arab world, so to say. Okay, you have heard of the camel trace between big use of the camels to carry stuff to the Middle East, and the back and forth, the kind of trade that was going on. There was also a lot of trade between the rest of Africa. I mean, the east coast of Africa was kind of a passageway of trade between internal Africa and the Middle East. Okay, and there was also the slave trade that it took place, between Africa and the Arab world, so to say. But it was a mixed bag. But today you've got a very poisonous environment, where this trafficking that they are talking about, where, I've seen some very depressing stories, for some of our sisters and daughters. We have been lured to go and work in the Middle East, and they are treated like a piece of death. The kind of suffering they go should not really be allowed to go on. And I think the only way to stop that is that I think the AU must take a very strong stand against that. We have the power to do it. The Arab world right now, they are trying to get as much land in Africa for production of their food, for their own food security and so forth. Now, we cannot allow them to do that when they are ill-treating our own people. And secondly, those traffickers, majority of them will be fellow Africans who are paid lots of money to lure our sisters to go and work, in those Arab countries and so forth. That such people must suffer very severe punishment for that type of food, for that trafficking and so forth. It is really up to us as African people to stop that trafficking, to be more aggressive, I think, than we are so far, And as I say, my heart bleeds when I hear the horror stories of what is going on with our sisters in the Arab world. I will address that issue as well, in more detail in our subsequent discussion.
Right, thank you. We also had 2 more questions. One from Deborah Kelly. She's saying, what do you think can be done to help the conflicts with Ethiopia and Eritrea? They continue to kill each other. How can we help?
Well, it's a complex situation, but also at the same time, if you know of Ethiopians, particularly here in the US, they can, give you more information on really the basis of that conflict and what can be done. From the USA to really, as an individual, there's not much you could do. It's an issue that like the AU is addressing, neighboring countries like Kenya and so forth are addressing and so forth. But I think at this stage, you just have to, get to understand exactly what are the reasons for that conflict. And I think some of our Ethiopian brothers and sisters can give us, how best to help. You can help in terms of, there's so many people who are affected, by this war. They need food, they need clothing and so forth. Maybe it's another way, in which you can find a way for providing help to those people. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. So the rest of the questions we'll ask you on next lecture.
Okay, yeah, I'll go over that as well, on the screen, and then take note of that, and we'll do that. And thank you so much. It's Sister Kua, most welcome. You take over, and I hope everything goes well. I appreciate it. You all have a wonderful weekend.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Christopher Mapondera. Enjoy your weekend as well.
Okay, all right.
Bye. We're going to have a Kua on today's lecture on healthcare. Nana Akua, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
And thank you so much.
Good morning,
Welcome.
good afternoon, good evening. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Hey, Yvonne, I see you. Thanks, Award. So today we start our new cycle of the Pan-African Healthcare class. Hey, Junior, I see you all. Thank you. I love to see beautiful Black faces. So we are talking about holistic health, all things holistic health, aspects of healing that are included in holistic healthcare. Some people call it alternative healthcare. Sometimes you'll hear the term complementary, alternative modalities, traditional medicine, folk medicine, some people call it mind-body medicine, but any aspect dealing with the natural substances from the earth, natural healing modalities that do not include foreign substances or prescriptions or surgeries and certain procedures generally fall under the guise of holistic health. So we'll get into that. But I understand, and I do see some, I think, new faces. So if you are new, welcome. And if you are returning, again, welcome. I'm Nana Akua Zenzele. I am a traditional healer. I have been in the field of natural healing for probably about 25 years. My specialty is herbal medicine or herbs. I also am well-versed in homeopathic remedies, reflexology, hypnotherapy, nutrition, spiritual healing. I love crystal healing. I collect crystals. So the energy from crystals, I often sort of implement in some of my products. I've been making products for over 25 years. So I want to just share information about how to just stay healthy, how to heal yourselves naturally if that's what you so choose, how to complement maybe what you may be doing in regards to Western or allopathic medicine, or just to increase your knowledge in general in the event that a family member has an illness, or in the event that you in the future has a need to utilize any of the gifts that God has given us to heal our bodies. So that's sort of who I am, really in a very brief nutshell. I'm sure there's more, but that's the gist of it. And so the goal here for this class is to simply provide a working knowledge of what it is to utilize holistic medicine, what it entails, what are different holistic healing modalities. And just so you really are clear on how the body works and different things that we can do. You know, I always bring this up on my screen and I don't know.
Yes, you can share your screen.
Great. So let me. So, as I mentioned, holistic health sort of encompasses a number of different modalities. And so I have found several little word charts like this that kind of focuses, and they have all different kinds, one on alternative health, one on holistic wellness, and they have all these different words that represent what holistic medicine is or what holistic wellness is. And so I pulled from a couple of definitions just so that you get an understanding, even though the words kind of point out some of the different aspects. But basically, holistic medicine is a form of healing that considers the whole person. So we focus on the body, we focus on the mind, we focus on the spirit, as well as the emotions. But basically, all of these components are necessary if you are trying to obtain optimal healing. They're all needed in order for balance to be achieved, right? So all things work together when taking sort of a holistic approach. You have to support the entire individual and know that no one aspect operates separate and apart from the other. The next handout here focuses on what the holistic healing principles are. And I think these are important because for as many that you can incorporate into your daily lives, into your whole health regimen, these are really important in terms of healing. Optimal health is basically the primary goal. Wellness in all of those areas that we've talked about. Mind, body, spirit, but also environmental balance, emotional balance, socially being balanced. All of these have an impact on a person's wellness and well-being. The healing power of love. You always want your holistic practitioner or your healthcare practitioner to basically show love, operate out of love. You want someone that has grace and kindness and acceptance. And a lot of times that's absent because you have doctors and healthcare professionals that are very judgmental and their way is the only way. You really want to find someone that's open and accepts you where you are. It's always been my practice to meet people where they are. You'll get much further that way. And that's just a humanistic thing, not even a professional thing. I think that that's necessary just in dealing with other human beings. The whole person is focused on, as we talked about, mind, body, and spirit are all connected, and you have to look at the entire or whole person. Prevention and treatment, you have to know how to prevent illness. So not just treating symptoms, but understanding what is causing the symptoms and coming up with the best course of treatment. So this holistic approach, it focuses on modifying contributing factors to those symptoms and relieving those so that you can enhance the person's life. The innate healing power, this concept basically is that we all exhibit or all have an innate power to heal ourselves. So basically you want a practitioner who can basically evoke that. You know, someone can utilize what you already have, who you already are, what your beliefs are, all of that assist in your healing. Integration of healing systems, and this just might be combining whatever systems work, whichever modalities are needed that are going to allow for the best course of treatment. It may be a combination of conventional prescription drugs along with some sort of mind-body medicine, where you may also go to meditation classes or a support group, or you may also take herbs in conjunction with chemotherapy drugs, for example. So a lot of times there may be the need to integrate across healing systems. The relationship-centered care. This is basically encouraging the relationship to be reciprocal. So basically, the healer or practitioner respects the individual, the client, the patient, and that there's equal exchange, and know that each person is essential. The individual knows themselves best. They know their lifestyle, their routine, their habits, what's normal for them, what have you. And that goes into the next concept, individuality. Everyone is different, and only you know your body best. You know what is common for you. You know when something is off base, when you need to highlight something with a practitioner that has limited knowledge of you and limited interaction with you. And then teaching by example. You basically want a practitioner that basically values the quality of a healthy relationship. They can show examples of how to heal, whether in themselves or just in how they handle treating clients or patients, or just giving clear examples of how to really incorporate what it is they're saying to do, not just pushing a prescription paper at you, or just saying take this or do this and do that. Really giving clear-cut, concise information, educating the person. And then learning opportunities. Life experiences include different things. You know, all of these issues allow for learning opportunities, and both the practitioner and the client or patient can share those things, and that assist in the healing process. And a lot of times as a healer, I may share personal experiences. Even in teaching this class, when we go over different things, I'm often sharing personal experiences of different herbs I've used, or flower remedies, or different aspects that we'll discuss that I've personally used, to use those as a learning opportunity. So these are just the concepts of what holistic healing is. And so when looking into a healthcare professional, even if it is a regular medical doctor or at a traditional clinic, you still want to find these aspects, especially if you have a choice of your healthcare provider. If you can find someone that utilizes these principles, you'll be doing really, really well. And I put a few handouts here, just giving different examples of holistic or alternative or natural therapies. And again, some are used interchangeably. Some are different aspects under alternative therapies, such as massage, acupuncture, homeopathy, nutritional therapy or nutritional counseling, herbal medicine, acupuncture, music therapy, exercise therapy, chiropractic. There are a number of holistic healing or natural healing modalities, aromatherapy, Ayurvedic medicine. So all kinds of modalities fall under this category. And I have a really beautiful picture here of a Sangoma here, a traditional healer. I liked incorporating this picture that I found on the internet, even though I personally know some Sangomas. But I found this picture and I really wanted to place this here, because as I go further into talking about different herbs specifically that are used for healing the body, or have traditionally been used for doing different things in the healing process, some you will find easily and readily available, others you will not. So depending on where you are on the planet, you may need to turn to a traditional healer. You may need to go to the local herbalist. you may need to go to the local spiritualist who will focus, as the Sangoma does, on herbs for healing or natural plants and natural substances that are used for healing. Physical healing as well as spiritual and emotional healing. So I wanted to include this picture and to encourage our folk who, because of colonialism, has turned away from some of our traditional customs and some of the natural medicines, and people who have the knowledge of the use of these traditional medicines. I want to encourage you to go back to what is ours and to focus on that. It can truly, in some regards, save your life, but in most cases, certainly enrich or enhance your lives. So I want to not shun the traditional local healer, but let you know that this may be your saving grace, your way of getting herbs and other healing that you may not have success by going to your regular local hospital or clinic. So just some common holistic principles. Focusing on your own abilities to heal is really, really key. I think it's very important to, again, not undercut or underrate yourself. Know that you are the star player. You are the key element in your healing. Even if it is simply you providing the information to the doctor, to the nurse practitioner, to the physician assistant, to the clinician at the health center that you're going to for help. You have your routine down. And what I would suggest is go armed with all the information already prepared. If you've been having symptoms, for as much as you can, make note of how long you've had a particular symptom, how long it lasts, when did it first start, what you've already tried, what things you're taking on your own. And it may be over-the-counter vitamins or supplements or herbs, or it may be some medication that you were already prescribed. But whatever it is, go with that information. Also, go with what your lifestyle, your diet, your routine is each day. If you're able, or someone who's caring for you, a spouse, companion, family member, jot down how you live, mainly with diet, what you typically eat in the mornings as an afternoon or mid-morning snack, what you have for lunch, what you eat late evening, what you have for dinner or supper, what you normally drink, how much of it, what is your water intake, how often do you have bowel movements, right? What is your lifestyle? Do you sit most of the day? Are you up doing something physical? Do you walk a lot, stand a lot? All of these. How often do you sleep? For how long? Do you sleep through the night? Do you wake up easily? These are things that you can go, you already have this information, and this is information that they will definitely need to figure out the best course of treatment for you. So just in that, you know that you already have the keys, right, to your success in healing. They will put it together, they'll figure out, okay, this is what this is. You know, and this is the medicine, or this is the diet. These are the remedies that are needed to bring you back into balance based off of these sets or pieces of information. And you also want to make sure you have someone that's in your corner that treats you as a person, not as the disease, not as a case study, not as a, you know, oh, this cancer patient, or this, you know, whatever. No, this is a person that's living with cancer, or this is a person that is fighting cancer, or what have you. You want someone that will make that distinction, and that you're not just looked at as the disease itself. And when you come with that information that I said, then you force them to look at the whole picture. Okay, I live this way, I eat this, I sleep this often, I do this type of work, you know, and even throw the emotional state in there. Most times I'm upbeat, you know, my predominant emotions are joy, you know, and happiness, you know, or if it's the reverse, well, you know, I'm usually pretty sad or gloomy or depressed. All of these are key elements, and you have that information. Arm yourself with it when you are going for healing and for help with healing. I'm going to skip over these pages here. This is some information just for you to have in your arsenal. And what I'd like to get into is just sort of the nuts and bolts of nutrition. Very quick, not very detailed or long-winded. Nutrients. Nutrients are substances found in food. And if we don't agree or have the same habits in terms of what types of medicines we use, we definitely eat, right? So for sure, it is important to know why food is important, what it is we need from foods, right? And then how to make the best choices in foods, because indeed our food should be our medicine. So nutrients are substances found in food. They nourish the body. And there are 6 main components or types of nutrients: carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, and water. So let me start with the last one, because I don't think I have a particular handout about water. So water, we know, is essential. We know that the earth itself, Mother Nature herself, right, is 2/3 water, as is the body. So we know that water is essential. We know it's cleansing. We know that it's purifying. We know that it's replenishing. We know it's refreshing. We know it hydrates, it moistens, loosens, and just moisturizes every aspect, internally and externally. So we know that water is crucial. We know that we need it to survive. We know that we can last longer without food than we can without water. So water is important. How much water should we drink? From a holistic standpoint, a very easy calculation is half your weight in ounces. Now, a lot of people outside of the States use what? Kilos. And I'm not good at that. And I'm often upset when I go to the doctor and they have the scale set on kilos rather than pounds. But I don't know, maybe I should be happy because the pounds are gonna look much higher than the kilos, right? But of course, as a well-traveled person, I'm familiar also. And once you get to, you know, 70, 80, 90 kilos, you know that you're pretty high in the pounds. But half your weight in ounces. And so we usually here in the States are calculating it by pounds. So if you are 200 pounds, then you need 100 ounces of water, right? Or if, or around 200 is what, 89, 90 kilos, right? So then you would need 40 kilos of water, but no, what would be the liquid ounces? What would be the liquid of kilograms? Yeah, so y'all figure that out. But if you can follow me using pounds and ounces, someone that's, you know, 180 pounds would need 90 ounces of water. And the key to that is then separating those ounces, or dividing those ounces, I should say, throughout the day. So you don't want to say, oh, I need 80 ounces of water, so let me drink 40 now, and then I'll do 40 in the afternoon. You really want to divide it throughout the day. So drinking the adequate amount of water, but spread out throughout the day. And then the highest quality or purity of water that you can find. I tend to drink only either distilled or alkaline water. However, if what you have accessible is a good purified water using, say, reverse osmosis, then you use what you have. If you simply have a water filtration system, you know, attached to your plumbing or your actual sink, or even if you have one of those filter pitchers, if that is what you have to at least try to pull out some of the impurities, fine. But as high a quality of water that you can find, you have to drink it. You have to drink it every day throughout the day. I am not a fan of these flavored, sweetened powders that flavor the water. So whether it's Crystal Light or the Walmart brand of Crystal Light or some of these other packets, because they have added color agents to those packets and artificial sweeteners, even the ones that say no sugar added. Nobody's drinking anything that's not sweet. Otherwise, what's the point of putting a flavor packet in your water? So even the ones that say sugar-free or no sugar added, I bet you a good amount of money that has some type of artificial sweetener in it. So it's really just best to avoid those things altogether. Add you some lemon or lime or orange or cucumber or peppermint leaves or something of that nature to the water, but otherwise leave all of those packets alone. Now, there are some packets that you may get from a health food store. I think they even have some aloe powders that you can add to it, or some stevia packets that have different natural flavors, raspberry, strawberry, whatever. If they are naturally sweetened with, say, stevia or agave or monk fruit or xylitol or something like that, fine. But as often as possible, just water, or water that just has some actual fruit or vegetable in it for your flavoring. So now let's move on to our carbs and our other nutrients, okay? So there are several charts that I have included here that give us a breakdown of what the different vitamins and minerals are and how to find them, right? So this is one chart. This is about protein, so let me skip that for just a second. And then I have listed the mineral and vitamin chart that gives all of the details of our vitamins and minerals. But no, we were talking about carbohydrates though, weren't we? I'm forgetting where I was. I don't know if I had a particular. Let me remind myself of the handouts. I'm not sure if I had a particular one about carbs. I think that was a few places up. So we know that carbohydrates, right, are necessary. We know that these are the substances that fuel the body, right? And their main role is to provide energy, right? And it's sort of like gasoline is to a car. Most people who are weight conscious, who are diabetic or pre-diabetic, have a real issue with carbs. The main key here is to select what we call good carbs or low glycemic carbs, but carbs are absolutely necessary. And so what I will say in terms of carbs here is you want to really learn the glycemic index, and we will talk about that. I don't know if that's week 3 or 4, but what I want you to know is carbs are important. They are an essential nutrient, right? And it's necessary for the body, right? So glycemic index is what, feel free to Google it. I actually need to still remember to get a better chart of the glycemic index than the one that I have. But there are charts that give you listings of foods that are high, moderate, and low in their starch content or their glycemic index. That is what we want to follow, and we want to avoid any foods that are 70 or higher. So your starches like your rice and pastas and potatoes or root vegetables and things of that nature, you want to select those that are lower carb. So if you're a potato person, for example, you would do a baby new potato, the new potatoes, the small potatoes, not the large russet potatoes. And my fellow continental Africans, I'm sure that all of those tubers, like your white yams, are higher starch, right? So we know that this is custom. We know that this is what we eat. This is a main staple in our diets. But if you are heavy around the middle, if diabetes runs in your family, if you know you consume that as the majority of your meal, I would say to cut back on that. Even if you reduced by half the portions that you're eating, right? Or if you're in the States and you sway away from the white potatoes and do, sweet potatoes. Even though sweet potatoes are still a root vegetable, it's still going to be high on the glycemic index, but not as high as your typical white potato. But so these are things to kind of just look for. But a lot of this, they contain what they contain. Portion control and modification is going to probably be the key, unless you can just do away with certain carbs like this altogether. And that's just not feasible for most people. I'm a bread person. I'm not going to stop eating bread. And I happen to also like potatoes. And it's just not something I see ever quitting altogether. But what I have to do is just work on how much of it that I will eat at a time. Okay. Same thing with the corn-based things, your kinky and such. There are certainly, we're used to eating certain amounts as fillers, and these are things we just have to cut back on. So carbohydrates are good. We just have to monitor them, try to reduce the portions and amounts that we're taking in, but we know that we do need these for fuel, for energy. Proteins is another nutrient. Proteins, we know, are usually in our meats. However, as I had scrolled through, we know that there are many other sources for proteins, but we know that proteins are important because they provide the body with amino acids. And these are what we call the building blocks, right? And they're needed for growth, they're needed for development, tissue repair, and all of this. So it maintains the body's tissues. It also provides structure. So it helps with like the building of muscle and bone and tissue around the bone. Also helps fight inflammation and helps with immunity or the immune cells. So we know that proteins are important. What I want to highlight is that there are definitely other options for proteins as opposed to just meat. And not that I'm saying everyone should just do away with meat. I do think we have to drastically limit how much meat proteins we have in our diet, and just be aware that there are in fact other sources of proteins. So we know that almonds, we know that avocados, we know that certain vegetables like Brussels sprouts, kale, broccoli, watercress, things of that nature are high sources of proteins. We know that in this comparison chart, per serving, right, per 3.5 ounce serving or per 100 grams, we know that there are many foods that are even higher in protein than some of these common meats that are found across the top, right? So we know that spirulina, which is a food from the sea, from the ocean, is very high in minerals and vitamins. Most people will put it in shakes and smoothies and cereals and things like that, but it has 58 grams of protein compared to a 3 ounce piece of chicken that only has 31 grams. So this just gives you really more detailed information of other sources of protein and how we can achieve it without solely relying on meats. Tempeh, quinoa, seitan, black beans, peanut butter, hemp, pumpkin seeds, lentils. TVP is total texturized vegetable protein. So this is a soy-based product that a lot of meat substitutes or meat alternatives are made out of. But all of these are options for protein. Moving on to proteins, carbs. Okay, now moving to fats. So we know that fats are an essential nutrient as well, right? Another one that kind of gets a bad rap, but it's all about choosing the right options for your fats. So we know that fats are found in different nuts and seeds and oils, right? From different sources. And we know that these are essential for fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin E, things of that nature. So we know that the body needs these. This provides us the essential fatty acids that we need in the body. These things help structurally with cells, cushions membranes, helps to prevent damage to these parts of the body, right? And so the key with fats is knowing which fats to consume. So I put the trans fats. Okay, so I may be left off the part about the different fats, which may be more than what we would need to discuss here. But just know that higher quality oils is what we need. I'm not a fan of your regular vegetable oils that are made from soy. And that's because of all of the genetic modifying going on with soybeans. And you have to know that if it is the cheapest oil on the shelf, if it is the oil that lasts the longest, if it is the oil that turns black after you use it the first time or up to a certain temperature, that is not going to be the best choice for you. So we want to do something more like coconut oil or sesame oil or macadamia nut oil, grapeseed oil, especially if you're frying or if you're doing high temperatures. And if you're doing sauteing or low temperature cooking with oil, then you would maybe do avocado or olive oil, walnut, sunflower, these types of oils, right? Because these are not oils that you would necessarily fry in, but definitely may give the flavor you want and are good for lower temperature eating. And we know also that we get good fats from avocados. We know that we get good fats and oils from things like salmon and even certain nuts and seeds. So that's what I'll say about fats, carbohydrates, proteins. These are all what we considered macronutrients. And so now moving back to micronutrients, our vitamins and minerals that I sort of skipped to earlier, right? We know that vitamins aid in energy production, wound healing, bone formation, immunity, and eye and skin health, right? And we know that our minerals, they help maintain our cardiovascular system and our skeletal structure, right? And so the charts that I kind of went through earlier, use this as a reference to know what the different vitamins do, where to find them, and how much you need. Okay, so I won't go over that today, but what I wanted to do is to be sure that I made it clear where to find this information or had it available to you. What I would like, however, to point out is that instead of supplementation or artificial or man-made vitamins and minerals, I wanted to provide this next handout that gives you a listing of food and herbal sources for vitamins and minerals. Okay. So if you're a tea drinker, if you make herbal products, if you cook a lot with certain herbs, this is really, really going to be beneficial for you. Because as opposed to just drinking a Lipton, tea, that's just your typical white or black tea, right? that usually contains caffeine, even if you get the decaffeinated one. My point is, it will not have the benefits of using these different herbs for your herbal teas. So if you're used to waking up to hot tea in the morning or drinking a hot tea at night, I really, really suggest that you consider one of these herbs or a number of these herbs based on what vitamins and minerals you may need. So if you know that in the whole world, you know, these days, right, is D deficient, right? Or, and I've said this before, but maybe not for those of our people that are near the equator, right, and get plenty of sun most of the year. But most of us here in the States are vitamin D deficient. So let me use that as an example. So if, for example, you just love drinking tea, some really mild flavored teas that you should add as opposed to just your regular black or white teas is something like an alfalfa or an oat straw or a mullein, right? Or red raspberry. All of these are really good options. They're high in vitamin D. They have really mild flavors. You're not going to taste it and be like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. You know, why would I drink this? You know, so there are all these options that will give you the essential micronutrients, right, that you need. And you still get your warm drink that you're used to on a daily basis, right? So go through this list. Just know that there are different herbs that will address different needs in terms of your vitamins and your minerals. Same thing as we age, we tend to lose calcium, or as we, you know, have insulin, glucose imbalances, and we may need more things like chromium, or if we have high blood pressure and we need more potassium, whatever the case may be. Also utilize the same concept when you're looking into what minerals you may need more of. Add horsetail into your daily tea drinking routine. Add some dandelion, you know, add some horehound or chamomile. And if you go through this list, you'll find that some herbs you'll see over and over again. So even if you want to pick those herbs that are highly nutritive herbs, or what I would call super herbs, then use those, because this is a very overwhelming list. You may say, okay, I can't get all these herbs, or I wouldn't know where to start. If you look over this list very quickly, and this is to see if you all are awake or listening, and so I can go cut this heat down because I'm about to burn up. See which ones, if anybody can, see which ones they're seeing over and over again. Which ones would you say, from what you see over and over again on this list, what would you consider as a perhaps super herb? Indulge me. One or two people at least. Come on. Even if you've been in the class before and you know the answer. Whew. Okay, I come back and there's answers on my screen. Awesome. Okay, garlic, nettle, excellent. Anybody else? There's two others that I'm sort of thinking of. I mentioned one of them. So alfalfa is one. Nettle is one of my favorite herbs, by the way. Garlic is, we know that garlic all around is excellent to include and very easy to add, especially into your cooking. But yes, garlic, great for fighting off infection, but also really high in a lot of minerals and vitamins as well. Nettle, like I said, my favorite for many different reasons. Not only for its mineral content specifically, but just for its impact on hair, skin, and nails. But alfalfa is one of those that has pretty much most of the vitamins and minerals that are needed for the body. Catnip and red raspberry also, you will see a lot if you look through the chart. Golden seal is great for a whole number of, I would put that where I would put like the garlic, like it's just a good all around herb. Sarsaparilla, okay, also a good one. So great. Okay, I see your question. So from which country? Yeah, so just kind of going from this list, and I understand that not everything I'm listing here are found throughout, you know, the continent. So yes, depending on where you're from. If you know one that is a lot, has maybe a lot of vitamins and minerals from your country, feel free to list that and educate me. So just again, so you know, include some of these things in your regular, you know, tea drinking. I'm not a tea drinker myself. Honestly, if you're treating an acute situation and you need a lot of a particular herb, tea is not the best or the #1 suggestion that I would use. However, again, this is for the person that loves drinking tea, or if you're definitely trying to cut down on your sodas, your carbonated drinks, and your sweet fruit drinks and stuff like that, adding teas is excellent, even if you make it into an iced tea or a cold or cool tea. So I know a lot of people are into teas, and so this is just one option to including herbs into your diet without having to do a whole lot. But someone like me that's not a tea drinker, then I would have to figure what combination of herbs work best for me, and I would either encapsulate it or I would make a liquid tincture or extract from it, okay? Yes, Echinacea is also another one. Yes, thank you all for obliging me with that. So these are herbs that are good to include into the diet that will give you the micronutrients that the body needs. These are herbs that are full of different vitamins and minerals, okay? So now the next part, I think I included this just so that you would get an idea of sort of where to start with a diet. So for folk who are looking to improve their diets, it can sometimes be a challenge knowing where to start. I want to do better. I want to eat better. Where do I start? And I'm not going to even say that starting with cutting out meat is the first place, because what I found in all my years of experience is most people have a problem with sugar, even more so than meat. And you will find people that can cut back on their meat, but can't necessarily cut back on their sugar intake. And we know that all carbs, we talked about carbohydrates, we know that all of these things turn into sugar. And so we really put a real burden on our pancreas, right? Especially, but other organs as well, when we consume too many carbohydrates or just straight sugars, okay? So one place to start may be that, cutting back on your sugars, evaluating where you're getting in sugars. And let me just say, it may not be the obvious. It may not be candies, cakes, pies. It may be salad dressing. It may be ketchup. It may be different sauces and seasonings. It may be the quote unquote spices or seasonings that you buy to flavor your food. Because not just the herbs and spices are included, a lot of those will include sugars in them as well. So there are a lot of what we call hidden sugars that are in foods. And we also know that a lot of things like maltodextrin, we know that sucrose is our regular table sugar, but fructose is what we call our fruit sugars. Then we have lactose, which is our dairy or our milk sugars. But then you have, so generally OSE at the end is a type of sugar, but just know there are other types of sugars as well. And we know specifically the artificial sugars like your aspartame and things of that nature, we also don't want. We don't want things that are in the corn syrup, especially the high fructose corn syrups. These are all sugars that you will find in so many prepackaged foods, so many quick meals, sauces, just different things, snack foods, you'll find these, breads. So you have to read labels, you have to get an understanding of where sugars are found and really start. So for me, I would suggest starting there, right? Starting with identifying what foods you're consuming that have sugar in it. And I would cut back on that. I would focus on drinking more water. And then you can consider, right, these other diet choices. Most people are not going to go raw food, but that might be an option for some people. So there's a raw food diet. Some people, claim that it has been a lifesaver for them, especially with weight loss, with bloating, with migraines. Gives you a lot of energy, but it can be a lot of work. So you would have to dedicate yourself to learning how to dehydrate foods, marinate foods, doing things. But a good cookbook could still help you get there. Some people use a juicing or juice fasting type of diet where for a period of time, a number of days out of the month, or maybe one day a week, and they simply use fresh pressed juices. If you do this, I am not a proponent of mixing fruits and vegetables. So I would do, if you're doing juicing, some fruits like citrus juices, or maybe berries, high pectin foods like apples, pears, plums, things like that, doing that earlier in the day, and then doing your vegetable juices midday or evening, like your greens or your cucumbers and celery and things of that nature. If you're watching your weight, juicing a bunch of carrots, it's not going to really help you. It is a root vegetable, and of course it has some health benefits, but it is a higher glycemic food. So it will have more calories and more what'll end up being sugar. Right? But alkaline diet, even if you're not strictly doing an alkaline diet, even most of us that are eating foods, if we can simply include 70%, let's even say 60 to 70% of alkaline forming foods rather than acidic foods or acid forming foods, this is a great start to making sure the body has a balance and that it's not over acid. And we know that acidity causes things like arthritis and various conditions where the body is hardened and stiff and dehydrated because of the acid forming foods, or inflamed. So that may be an option, an alkaline diet. There's also a macrobiotic diet, which is an Asian-based diet where it does cook foods, but it's mainly vegetarian and grains and things of that nature. And then this Gerson diet, which I'm not personally that familiar with, but it kind of combines a couple of concepts, doing organic vegetarian foods along with juicing, along with some things to cleanse the body like coffee enemas and certain supplements. That may be an option for you, okay? So these are just some things in terms of specific diets. But again, if you focus on whatever your needs are, why are you changing your diet? What are your health complaints? Why would you need to change? Do you have higher cholesterol, higher blood pressure? Is your blood sugar out of, balance? Depending on the reason, that's where you start. Oh, okay, I know my blood pressure is high, but I know I loved lunch meat sandwiches and meat. So I know I'm a salt shaker. Every meal I got the salt shaker over the food and adding salt, even though the foods have already been cooked in salt or already are kind of prepackaged meats or preserved meats from the deli that already are full of sodium. Then that would be where you would focus, or that is where you would start. So just depending on what your situation is, determine what dietary changes you need to make. If you know that you drink little to no water and every day you're drinking coffee and sodas, then that's where you start, okay? So I'm going to go through the rest of this. The last thing, that's the last thing. So this food combining chart is very simple. This is about proper food combining. Our whole concept of meat and potatoes just doesn't work. A starch and a protein does not go together. It does not digest properly together. It takes different enzymes to, I'm going backwards. I'm gonna get me a touchscreen laptop next, because this is a pain. But basically the concept is proteins go with vegetables, starches go with vegetables. If we are eating certain proteins with starches, know that there's going to be some digestion issue. And even if you don't specifically feel it, know that your body is having to work overtime to digest it. Okay, I'm trying to scroll through, but I don't think these are for me. Okay. Yep, I'm gonna skip through that. Making sure I'm not missing, because I didn't stop midway to check questions. Okay, good. Yeah, distilling your own water, drinking fruits and vegetable juices. All right. Yes, so I'll put my email as I usually do. So if you do need the information, I'll gladly send you all the packets so that I'll only have to do it once. If you've been in the class before or received or if you've received the information before, it is in fact the same information, right? But yes, if you email me, so I think someone listed yeah, so I think someone listed their email. Please email me. But yes, what we eat is important. And then as I shared at the end, how we eat it is just as important. So choosing wisely what you're taking into your body is important, but you also have to be aware of how you're combining it with other foods, okay? The other thing, and I don't think I even usually get to mention this, the other piece with eating or food is when you're eating. So 2 things I have to say about that really quickly. Never eat when you're really, really upset. So if you are at a heightened emotional state, it is not a good idea to eat. So, and that's if you're really, really happy and just exhilarated and full of joy, or if you are so down and out and you are so full of sadness, at neither time should you consume food during that time. Extreme emotions interfere with digestion, okay? So you really kind of want to be feeling sort of good and, not at any, extreme or the other. The other thing is to not eat close to your bedtime. You should always give your body time to start working on digestion, because there are time frames throughout the night that different parts of the body, different systems within the body are doing their work. If it has to get thrown off by digesting food as opposed to all of the other processes that happen while the body is at rest, you're overworking your body. So always give at least 2 hours before bedtime to have had your last meal, okay? And carbonation is never a good idea. Someone's asking about carbonated water. So carbonated water is putting into the body what it is naturally trying to expel. So carbon is a toxic gas that we are typically trying to expel. So when we carbonate things, so whether it's soda, whether it's the seltzer water or whatever that's carbonated, these are all things that we want to avoid. Now, if you just have to have carbonation, carbonated water is better than, say, soda carbonation, because of course the soda has added the sweeteners, the colors, and all these other things to it, right? But ideally, carbonation is not what we want to have in our drinks. I know in some cases, and one of the jokes of folk here, especially in certain parts of the US, right? A running joke is that Black folk think that ginger ale is like medicine, right? And you're like, oh, you don't feel good? Let me get you some ginger ale. Oh, your stomach upset? Let me get you some ginger ale. And of course, it's the carbonation that kind of sometimes helps relieve the body and allows the body to belch or get rid of or bring up some gas, right? But the carbonated water would work just the same. And that's one of those cases where when we talk about homeopathics next week, there is a remedy called Carbo-Veg, right? That is good for that feeling. Like if you feel like, oh, I'm so full, I feel sick, if only I could belch, or I have to relieve myself. And this is what we're usually looking for, right? We're doing the ginger ale and that carbonated type of stuff. There's a homeopathic remedy that does that. You simply put it under your tongue and it helps relieve that feeling of having overeaten or just feeling sick on your stomach and have some digestion problems. So yeah, that's that. So if you remember next week, make sure I mention that or take note this week as I send the lessons. You'll see the list of homeopathic remedies. But I think that I got all of the questions and I think my time is up. So I will send out the lessons this week and I will see you all next week. So as always, good health and peace. Have a good weekend.
Thank you so much. Have a good weekend too.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. On next, we have Dr. Tyreen Wright on today's lecture, Pan-African lecture. Welcome to the meeting, Dr. Wright.
Yes, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how are you? I was trying to unmute myself. Okay, you'll see me momentarily. Welcome everyone to Pan-African History and Organizing, which is the ideological training course for I Love Black People. I'll be putting everything up as I speak. And this course basically focuses on the history of Pan-Africanism, the definition and practice of Pan-Africanism, and understanding those concepts as it relates to the work you do with I Love Black People. One of the things we're going to start with today, and this wasn't a part of my practice at one time, but I decided to incorporate it in my practice with I Love Black People as well, which is using a film called The Journey of Man, A Genetic Odyssey. And we are going to actually watch that today because it begins the conversation about humanity, what and who is human. And that is, of course, important because part of what you do with I Love Black People is fighting the anti-human sentiment in the world. So I will be posting that in all the groups as we speak as well. And that will be one of the first things you do in the context of this course, is watch that. That will be one of the first things you do. So that being said, you'll see me shortly, I think, if my camera is together. But along with that, we'll go over the first items in the syllabus. We only have 4 weeks together and it goes very fast. The last session went so fast, all of us were a little befuddled, or at least I was, because things move very quickly in here in the 4 weeks. So 1, you'll be given readings every week through the group. You will access these readings through the WhatsApp feature where we share all the materials. Please save the materials. The materials are such that you would want to collect them as a result of being in this course. They are things that you would not ordinarily possibly get, or they come from a number of books and texts. And sometimes those things are not, available free of cost. So if I were you, all of the documents that I share are in PDF format, and you should download them. If you have the capability of saving them, printing them, I would actually even do that so that you always have a hard copy. But if you don't have the capability to save it, then most certainly just have an electronic file where you can always go back to that material because it would be helpful to you. So those things will be shared with you in WhatsApp, and you will be able to access them at any time. I'm about to, I think my camera's working. I had it on and it just didn't seem to take, but you should, okay, good. So, so you should save those materials for the course because they are, you know, for example, one of the documents that are shared in the context of the course is the resolutions from various historic conferences. And so those things are sort of hard to get, and or you might have to buy some comprehensive political anthology to get documents like that. So those things are shared amongst many other things, right? And they'll, you know, and then of course I will be sharing chapters from, hi, how are you? I'll be sharing chapters from this book, which is actually a book that this is the old cover, but this is this is, well, somebody might say this is the original cover, but anyway, it was changed again. Chapters from this book, Booker T. Washington in Africa. We're gonna start out, and you'll get that today, really by Monday, but the lecture will start out with it today. You will be reading chapters from that book, not because I wrote it, but just because the chapter on Pan-Africanism and the evidentiary chapters of the book are really good sources of, really good sources of evidence for what we're going to be talking about, specifically the definition and history of Pan-Africanism, along with I'm sorry, the specific history of Pan-Africanism, along with the actual evidentiary chapters, okay? I have something funny going on because I have new kittens and they want to be a part of this so bad. Anyway, so I'm a professor, as you guys know, and I when I'm teaching, I teach more than one university, but as I'm teaching, these little new they're not people, new animals are always involved. So if you guys see, this is one. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today, and you should see it go up in the group, but what I'm going to do is share it in my screen. Yes, very cute, but learning to be a bit of a problem already. So the syllabus is what we're going to go over right now, and I'm going to share that momentarily. I'll be plugging in the new dates because I haven't finished plugging in the new dates, but I'll plug in the new dates and we'll be starting on the first reading. So what I'll do, I've had to adjust things. What I will be doing is delving into this first chapter along with the film, first chapter of the readings, along with the film, The Journey of Man, the Genetic Odyssey. I'll be sharing my screen with you for that, and then posting the actual film in the group, okay? So no worries about where to get the resources for this. It's actually all provided for you, and you do not have to do anything, or it's not costly to you. That being said, all right, some people are already chatting. Oh, okay, all right, good. Yes, so in order to, yeah, the cat is only, he is, I don't know, 3 weeks. I mean, not 3 weeks, 7 weeks, 6 weeks or something like that. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to begin the film because that's where we're starting. As the portion of the film is playing, I'll be posting documents, and the next thing we'll do is go over those documents so that you have a head start on the readings. That being said, let me introduce the film. We are only going to look at a portion of it, which of course on the platforms that we have, we can only look at a portion of it here because of the simple fact that Zoom and YouTube and all of that kind of stuff has rules about sharing stuff. So you can only watch a portion of it anyway. That being said, this film is the product of a book. And the book is called The Journey of Man, a Genetic Odyssey. And for a long time, I've been using this material. I've been using it on the university level. However, it has been something that I felt like is relevant in this environment. So I had to start incorporating it because it's very important to have this conversation. Meaning you're going to hear me use terms in the content in the next 3 weeks, meaning terms like Black, terms like African. And I think that it's always helpful to raise everybody's boat in understanding that where the world is scientifically, and one of the undisputed facts that exists in the world is that humanity is African. Okay. And this is not something that, for me, it's common knowledge, but it's not common knowledge for everyone. So the film that we are going to watch, you're going to watch from the outset, is called The Journey of Man, the Genetic Odyssey. And it tests this theory of the origin of humanity being Africa and the peopling of the world from the position of the African continent, meaning humanity originating on the African continent and then moving. I feel like the top of my head is cut off in the frame. The origin of humanity is Africa, and from there, human beings migrate to all the 4 corners of the earth. Okay, this has been a long-standing theory, but about 20 years ago, a geneticist actually got the money to test what this theory was via DNA. And let me say it another way. This geneticist named Spencer Wells got the funding to test the theory and was able to do DNA mapping. So this theory has existed. It has been a big debate in the intellectual world. There's some people who even built their careers around arguing that human beings did not originate in Africa and that civilization did not originate in Africa, and have certainly been buried at this point because it is an undisputed scientific fact. I would take it even further, that the understanding is that to be human means to be African. That being said, Spencer Wells got the funding to film the testing or the DNA mapping done around the world to locate the origins of humanity and to identify the common thread amongst all of humanity. So that is in essence what this film is. And it deals so much really with one of the things that we are combating in this organization, which is racism. What you'll see in the film is once the scientist says that he's there to test their DNA and to that he's there to test and qualify, use the science to qualify a theory, you will see a lot of resistance towards the idea that they are in fact, that we all are in fact African. And then I'll talk about Blackness in relationship to that. And that being said, this is one of the things that we're facing. White supremacy and culture has spanned the world, and therefore an organization like this is necessary. But this film speaks to this idea of race and the construction of race, and really debunks this idea of race as anything other than a social construct. It is not a scientific fact. Race is not scientifically provable. 1 second. So this is what in essence is explored, or not even explored, but proven in this film. Okay. So I will be sharing that, and hopefully I'm going to share that on my device instead of my computer, because I'll be working on the computer at the same time. So hopefully I don't get too many interruptions. However, what we're going to focus on is just the early part of the film, just a couple of minutes to begin the conversation. And what you're going to see in essence is, for those of you who are on the African continent, you very likely are familiar with and possibly even connected to the people that this documentary begins with, which are the Khoisan people of southern Southeast Africa, present day Namibia. And you will see the explanation of the genetic marker and the DNA marker that the study follows around the world. Okay. A couple of points before I switch to it. One of the things we don't want to get fixated on. So Spencer Wells is in fact a European male. We don't care. We just want the information. So we're not fixated on him, and he's nobody's God and he's nobody's authority. We are looking for the science that his study proves and or disproves. 1. 2, he comes with his own bias and his own nonsense, of course. We're just going to filter that out. I use a lot of things that I have to filter the person's bias out of, right? Because we all come with bias, right? Meaning representing our own position in the world. He is in fact a European. He's one of the few Europeans who know that race is not real. However, he's not the end all to be all. One of the things he says that I want to make sure that no one confuses for the truth, it is in fact his opinion. He explains how DNA works. He puts that squarely in the context of European culture and science, but he also goes even further and says that science is the European discovery, or science is European. And we know that that is not true. I guess he's got to give some plug to his people and his origins, even though that he understands humanity is like a large family tree. Europeans did not discover science. I think it is quite simple understanding to know or have knowledge of the fact that even in our antiquity, ancient Kemet, we have entire human bodies that have been preserved, not just for 100 years or 200 years, but for 5,000 years, right? And this is without dispute. You know why? Because they're sitting in European museums, right? And they have not been able to preserve human bodies from their cultural context from Europe. However, African people were preserving entire human bodies 5,000 years ago. You don't do that without a deep and intricate understanding of the human body, which is science and biology. So, you know, we dismiss him on those issues. We're just looking for the DNA as evidence to qualify, but also what you're looking for in this film in particular are the attitudes that are exhibited around this idea of Africa and African people being the origin of humanity, okay? Because this attitude is some of what we are still struggling with. It is what we are struggling with. It is what is unsafe for us in the world, but also we need to understand that to be African means to be human, right? And so I always invoke a classmate of mine, an alumni of mine, who said that the first humans or no human being lives outside a cultural context or construct. The first human beings emerge in Africa. Therefore, to be human means to be African, and vice versa. To be African means to be human for the longest time on this earth. Human beings have been in existence for 200,000 to 300,000 years. Okay. Most of that time we spent in Africa. A minority of that time we have emerged outside of Africa into the rest of the world. Just to give you an understanding of, in terms of Europeans in relationship to this, Europeans, people who are distinctively lacking melanin, only emerged 7,000 to 8,000 years ago. 7,000 to 8,000 years ago. That's 2 minutes in historical terms. African people, people who are distinctively manifesting melanin and who we would call Black, have been in existence for 200,000 to 300,000 years. Okay, so we've been here a long time, and that also, I'll go on in the concept when we get a little further into the course, that also has a lot to do with our relationships. We are African people from the continent of Africa, distinctively melanated. We are the first friends, we are the first foes. We are the first, period. And most of our time we are on the African continent, okay? The so-called Native American only is in the Americas for the last, I'll be generous if I say the last 100,000 years, okay? But really it's more like something like 30 to 50,000 years. You can put them in that region of the world, okay? So you're talking about human being synonymous with African, okay? Because culture is real, race is not. Race is a construct produced by that small group of people who have only existed for the last 7,000 to 8,000 years. And the concept of race has only emerged in the last 500 years, okay? And that's like 2 minutes in historical terms. However, don't get me wrong, this concept of race is very unfortunate for us because it has plagued our existence. I'm trying to avoid the light. It has plagued our existence and caused great detriment to us. It has challenged the value of our lives. It has challenged our humanity, the irony of people who are the origin or the oldest human beings having to consistently defend their humanity, the irony to the youngest people on the earth. And that's precisely what the situation is. The oldest people on earth, meaning people coming from the African continent who still distinctively are identifiably from the African continent, still manifesting a considerable amount of melanin, and have been inhabitants of the earth for the last 200,000 to 300,000 years, have to defend their humanity to the youngest and most recent human beings on the earth who have only been in existence the last 7,000 to 8,000 years and have created a construct in the last 500 years that puts our humanity into question. It is not only ironic, it is just sad, okay? So this is why I use this film, because it raised all ships and brings us to the same level of understanding and knowledge in terms of the fact that we are all human. If your origin is not traceable back to the African continent, where the Homo sapiens sapien, that is the scientific term for what we are. And it is without dispute that the modern human is African, distinctly African, okay? And I could go deeper into the science, but I'm not gonna go heavy on there. I'll, maybe on another occasion, I'll talk a little bit about that. However, to address this issue is to have an understanding that the Homo sapiens sapien, which is the modern human, is what we are. Okay, and that emerges nowhere else on earth but in Africa. Okay, the Homo sapien does not come about in Asia, in Europe. It migrates. In Americas, it migrates to those places on the earth. Okay, it does not originate. So when people say, because we have a whole new line of people who are melanated, who have bought into this, oh, we're indigenous Blacks, we're Native Americans. No, Native Americans are Africans who migrated from Africa across the Barren Straits and into the Americas and down into the continental, what is the continental US and Central and South America. It's not the other way around. There is no Homo sapiens sapien that emerged, that sprung out of the ground here in the Americas or came out of the sky and then branched out to the rest of the world. It is not true. It is not scientifically provable. It has not been scientifically proven, and there is no evidence to support that. So, this is, we're raising all our ships in understanding that the origin of humanity, is the home of humanity, is Africa without dispute on a scientific level. And they, trust me, they try it all the time. If they could prove otherwise, it would have already been proven. Okay, and they try it. There's, I'm going off on a tangent, but let me just say that there's an Asian geneticist who was hoping, because you have people who hope to say there's something other than Homo sapiens sapien, because they understand that scientifically the Homo sapien is African. So there was and I could actually share it maybe later on in the course of the semester, the cycle. There was a Chinese geneticist who went out of his way to try to find Homo erectus, which was another hominid that was in existence during the same time as Homo sapien and other hominids. Homo erectus, we know, was in Asia. He was looking for the DNA imprint of Homo erectus, just to say that the origin of Asian people was in fact not Africa. And I found this to be interesting, because I know the sun is like, I found this to be interesting because he was so eager to say he was not African, he would connect his people, his culture, to something that was not even human. Of the hominids, the only one that is human is Homo sapiens sapien. That's interchangeably human. Means we have a frontal lobe that allows us to problem solve long term and ensures our survival. Okay. There are other hominids, but they do not have that capability. And I'm just referring to the brain because of the simple fact that it is the most important, significant, not even the physical phenotype that is as significant. The difference in the brain is what allows one to problem solve in a way that ensures one's survival. And this is why the Neanderthal didn't survive and why Erectus didn't survive. So my point is that this Asian geneticist, Chinese geneticist, was looking for the imprint of Homo erectus, hoping that Homo erectus, an animal, had procreated with the Homo sapien in that part of the world, or that in some way there was the imprint of Homo erectus in the Asian population, so that he could in fact say that their origin was not Africa. But to say your origin is not Africa is to also proclaim that you are not human. So there's the catch-22. So I think you get a good understanding why I do show this film. I think that's a bit of a, I gave you more than I give most in the introductory conversation about that. I usually let people just see. So here we're just going to look at a little blip of the film where it shows the Khoisan people. And we also, listen, critical of Spencer Wells' language. This is the Khoisan. Some of you are in South Africa or Southern Africa and are familiar with the Khoisan. To call people, the word tribe is European. To call people Bushmen or Bush people is European. That is their description. That's not necessarily what the people are calling themselves prior to the encounter with imperialists and colonialism. So please be knowledgeable that I'm not endorsing any of what he says. I am endorsing simply the use of the science to qualify the age-old theory that we originate on the African continent and therefore move out of the African continent and people the rest of the world. Another way to say it is that all the world's indigenous people are African and therefore Black. Black is a natural characteristic of being African. It is the human jacket. You don't want to leave home without it. It causes big problems. So my point is that, we edit in real time, filter some of what he says to get the substance of the study, okay, in real time. So he uses some terms like the Bushman, Stan Bushman, even though he knows that he's displaying a little willful ignorance by not saying Khoisan at all times, because he knows that they're Khoisan. Okay, so let me just switch to it. I'm gonna switch my screen and share this moment in the film.
Hello, Dr. Tiding Wright. Are you able to share your screen?
I was saying you have to unmute me. Yes, I am able. I think I am able to share the screen. 1 second. I'm still queuing the film. Hold on. Okay. I hope you guys don't hear it, but you probably do. It's oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So you should be able to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, and I'll be sharing my screen in a second. I'm queuing it. Okay. All righty. And you just let me know if you can hear it at the same time. So, because I'm sharing on my device, so the controls are different. Okay.
We know the fathers of
Can you hear
mankind
it?
started their journey from here. But why did they leave?
Can you hear
I'm
the,
hoping the few survivors they left behind, the San Bushmen.
can you all hear it?
Yes, we can hear it and we can see it at the same time.
Okay, so you can hear it. All right, I don't have to adjust anything. Okay.
Will help me solve this fundamental question. 50,000 years on, I hear their numbers are dwindling fast. Soon they could be gone entirely. I'm arriving not a moment too soon.
Hello? Hi. I'm Spencer.
And my two children, they are boys. This is my wife.
Amazing. Do you want to see a picture of my daughter? This is her in her school uniform. What's her name? Margot.
I have to explain to them why I'm here. But how do I begin? For a start, what's Bushman for geneticist anyway? I sense this is really going to be tough for a lab rat like me.
I just want to tell you a little bit about why I've come here. It's mostly to find out about your way of life. I'm really excited to be here. You know, it's such a dream for me to get to meet the San people, the Bushmen. In a way, you carry a secret in your blood, and you can think about it like a family tree.
I explained the tree was just like the family that we all belong to. My family line is one of the small fractured branches at the very top, while theirs is the oldest on Earth, the biggest branch at the base of the trunk. I get the feeling I'm not explaining this at all well, but they're way too polite to say so. This is really quite embarrassing.
So it's a great privilege for me to come and meet my distant relatives and the people who give us a glimpse of all of our ancestors. So in one sense, we're all Khoisan. We're all San people. It's just that my skin is slightly redder.
We would like to thank you for the information that you brought for us.
This is like a dream for me. Everything predicted in their blood seems to be written in their faces. It's like looking at a composite model of every face from around the world. The eye shape of East Asians, the high cheekbones of Mongolians, the mid-brown skin that could turn darker or lighter. So how do I know that of all the people on Earth, the San are direct descendants of our oldest ancestors? I'll try to explain a little better this time. I work with DNA, our very own manual of life. It's in our blood, in every cell of our body, orchestrating our life processes. DNA is a ladder of just 4 linked molecules, A, C, G, and T, strung together in pairs in an incredibly long and complex sequence. If laid out, the DNA from one person would stretch to the moon and back 3,000 times. In our cells, this chain is broken into 46 bundles called chromosomes. Because of its sheer length, DNA is prone to develop small glitches in its sequence. They're called mutations. Everybody has them. When they occur, we pass them on to our children. We call these inherited mutations markers. As our chromosomes pass down through the generations, they carry these markers with them. They write our history. They are the source of our time machine, the way we can see back to our earliest ancestors. The markers I follow are found only in men, on their Y chromosome, the chromosome that makes men men. But of course, men don't travel alone, and the journey of man is the journey of everyone.
I was walking through the village and I saw that they had massive piles of these sitting around everywhere. I call them monkey oranges. And they taste pretty good. They're a little bit like papayas. But I thought it would be a good idea to use them to explain exactly what we mean when we say we're following genetic markers. This is a man at some point in the past. The thing that makes him a man is his Y chromosome, a piece of DNA that's unique to men. When men have sons, they pass on their Y chromosome to those sons. Again, it's what makes them sons. So if we imagine that this man had two sons, they would have essentially identical DNA on the Y chromosome to their father. So they would get his Y chromosome in effect. And if we imagine that they also have sons, those sons, the grandsons of this very first man, would also have essentially the same DNA. But occasionally, we pass on these pieces of DNA, we get a change in a single letter in the sequence. We can call those mutations or markers, and that's what allows geneticists to trace descent. And I've represented this marker with a little strip of tape, a little black bar. And just like before, all of the sons of this particular man will have essentially the same Y chromosome, so they will inherit this marker. And in that way, the marker acts effectively as a badge of descent, a marker of descent from this particular man, and that's what we follow. Now, as we move further down the tree, most of the sons will inherit just that single bar, but occasionally, as we saw before, we will get a second change in the Y chromosome. A second marker appears, showing descent from a particular man, in this case, this person, who has first that marker, which came from that person back there, but an additional unique change on his Y chromosome, which he then passes on to all of his descendants. So in the people that we're talking about living in the present day, in this part of the tree, they've got two markers. They clearly trace their descent from this man, but the first marker, remember, arose all the way back there, all those generations ago.
The San Bushman markers are quite unlike any others found outside of Africa. In the world's family tree, their branch is the first to split from the rest. That's how I know they must be the oldest tribe on Earth. And now I'm here with them, looking for clues to find out why their ancient brothers and sisters left this place. The first thing I noticed was their incredible language. They speak with clicks and other sounds totally alien to me.
And the word for zero? Kora.
They try to teach it to me.
And for two? Ta. And three? Lani. And four? Go. I can't get that four.
Is this strange language a window on the past? Did our ancestors speak like them? Merritt Rulin, a linguist from my old university, Stanford.
Bushman is the only family which has clicks. Those kinds of sounds. None of the other world's language families have these sounds. So this is really what makes Bushman languages different from all of the other world's languages. There's a reasonable hypothesis that these clicks are in fact ancestral sounds which have been lost in all of the other world's languages, probably lost just once in Africa. And then the group which lost these clicks left Africa and spread throughout the entire world.
When I ask another colleague, paleoanthropologist Richard Klein, also from Stanford, he goes even further.
Speech is more than just communication. It's also the way you model your world. You can ask what-if questions. What if I mounted this piece of stone on the end of this shaft in this way, and I put a string across this bowed thing, and I tried to shoot the shaft with this bowed thing? What if? You know, that kind of question is something that probably requires language to be answered effectively, even if it's just one person talking to themselves in their mind's eye.
50,000 years ago, Click was a new and complex language. There'd been nothing like it before. But there were other innovations too. They showed me this. It's a spear tip finely crafted from bone. It might not seem like much today, but when our ancestors started using it, it was the last word in technology. The smart missile of its day.
In every detectable archaeological respect, meaning the manufacture of art, the widespread use of materials like bone and ivory and shell, the burial of the dead with ceremony or with ritual. In every detectable archaeological respect, after 50,000 years ago, you see this burst of creativity. There's a big difference in behavior. The form is fixed and culture takes off.
Interesting. So they didn't use stone.
No, they didn't use stone. They used the bone.
The bone.
Yeah.
Because it's more efficient.
Yeah.
The arrows were finer. And
Yeah.
toward me. Yeah, you have more control. Right. So you just want to make it very round and very smooth. Now we're getting somewhere. When they left Africa 50,000 years ago, the ancestors of these New Age people had state-of-the-art hunting technology and a brand new language to communicate ideas.
Now, how far back can I pull it?
You must be careful.
Further? One more. Going to the right.
But they weren't philosophers, they were hunters. Next, the Bushman showed me how these new skills were used. Like forensic detectives at the scene of a crime, the San Bushmen read clues left in the ground and get inside the mind of their prey. 50,000 years ago, this kind of thinking would have given them an immense advantage over their competitors, anyone who couldn't think like this. Piers Latrange has worked with the Bushmen for years. He's seen firsthand the best trackers in the world.
If you look on the edge of the track over here, it's got a very, very sharp edge. Yeah. And that's basically their main thing, working, saying, okay, the age of the track. And then they'll take another
How
sign.
precise can they be? I mean, to within hours?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
These are the prints of a wildebeest. Now we're on its trail. A lion will wander across hoof prints without a second thought. If it can't see the animal, hear it, or smell it, it simply doesn't exist. It would have been the same for our distant ancestors. But 50,000 years ago, these trackers learnt to see into the past and into the future. The hoof print told them that an animal had walked this way in the past, and if they followed its tracks, in the future they'd fill their bellies.
Okay, we're going to stop there. I think you got the gist of it in terms of where the film is going, in terms of the information. What I want to go to, so watch it all the way through. The link is actually in the syllabus, which I've just shared with you all. And so I'm going to open up, hold on one second. Let me open that up in the Zoom. No, in WhatsApp. So I'm going to go to WhatsApp and open up the syllabus and then share my screen again and tell you a little bit more about, okay, can I have permission to share my screen again?
Okay.
Yeah, can I?
You can share it now.
Okay. Okay. So You should see the syllabus in front of you. Can everybody see that?
Yes, you can see it.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So this is the actual course, Introduction to Pan-African History and Organizing, an ideological training seminar for Isle of Black people. And this is the fall 2021. So I'm just going to read the course description to you briefly. An Introduction to Pan-African History and Organizing, an ideological development course that surveys the history of Pan-Africanism as a theory and practice. The seminar is structurally designed to examine and engage in a critical analysis of the theories and practices of Pan-Africanism as both a political and ideological impetus for organizing African Black people globally. The course begins with the historical foundations of Pan-Africanism at the turn of the 20th century as a budding concept in the Pan-African diaspora and the Americas. It becomes the impetus for international organizing in Europe, the first Pan-African Conference in 1900, and finds its highest expression in Africa as liberation struggles against colonialism and the ideal of continental unity. Many have questioned the measurable results produced by Pan-Africanism. This course explores this idea and qualifies the practice and production of Pan-Africanism, considering measurable social, political, economic, and material gains for African people globally by examining policy cases, conference resolutions, and various approaches employed by early proponents of Pan-Africanism, African nationalists, organizational bodies, and institutions, okay? And so the learning outcomes for us are the following. There are quite a few, and I'll refer to them as we move through the readings at different times, but these are the learning outcomes. There are about 10. And some are intertwined and overlap, okay? One, a working definition of Pan-Africanism, which we jump right into that with the first readings on the history of Pan-Africanism, and you'll actually get that between today and Monday. It's a chapter called Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanist. And once again, we're just using an entry point. It's not a major deal like in terms of using Booker T. Washington. It's an entry point into the conversation. And yes, he is an unlikely figure, but you'll understand why when you read the chapter. Also, the next one, so a working definition of Pan-Africanism, knowledge of its specific history, development, and emergence as an ideology, theory, and practice in the world. Two, the ability to identify and qualify Pan-Africanist thought, speech, and action across various technological mediums, social media platforms, virtual realities, and brick and mortar spaces. And so in other words, that's a sort of critique of the rhetorical structure of someone who is coming from a Pan-Africanist perspective. That's how we can dictate that, detect that. The ability to qualify whether policies, legislation, organizational initiatives, and or general practices are Pan-Africanist in nature and beneficial to African Black people. The ability to identify imperialism, colonialism, and neocolonialism as oppressive and exploitative systems as they have manifested throughout the African world, Africa, and its diaspora. 5, the means and methods through which African and Black people have organized, fought, resisted, and liberated themselves and nations from imperialism, colonialism, and the ways in which neocolonialism is currently being resisted. 6, the role of Pan-Africanism as a primary strategy and tactic in the effort to eliminate racism and xenophobia. 7, the ability to differentiate multiple perspectives through an analysis of different case studies built on measured evidence-based arguments and research essays. The ability to apply the knowledge acquired in the seminar to the active role and responsibility as ambassadors of I Love Black People in eradicating racism and xenophobia. 9, the ability to qualify again everything before declaring it substantial or beneficial to African or Black people locally and globally. 10, develop a measurable results orientation regarding business practices and services, policy and political agendas, legislative initiatives, organizational efforts, and institutional practices. So I use 2 cases that come from the BTW in Africa book that give you an understanding in terms of a model of how to weigh and measure and qualify things at the end. I think this is one of the things that eludes us around the world. I think on the African continent, though, we're probably a little more astute at this particular aspect on the end, on the outcome side, meaning I think sometimes you will hear more often than not in the continental African context, when leaders ultimately prove themselves not to be of service to the people by not producing anything, you may hear more honesty about that than you might hear sometimes on the diaspora. Now on the front end, don't get me wrong, there'll always be a lot of encouragement and support to get leadership on the African continent that's supportive of the people. But then when they fail to do that, I think continentally, on the continent, there might be some level of honesty around that, like, hey, you failed us, go. And, some resistance to that leadership who wants to stay forever and produce nothing for the people. Because what we want is a world that gives African people, Black people, what it deserves, which is respect for our humanity, and an ability for us to benefit the most from Africa and what Africa has to offer the world, not be the last, okay? And without dispute, top of the list, what we want in this world is our right to move about the world freely, free of negation on every level and with dignity, right? We don't want our humanity violated in any way by people who look like us, which would be xenophobia, or people who don't look like us, which is what racism is. So we have to know how to qualify those circumstances, right? Very often out here in the diaspora, what we do, because we are out in the diaspora and we are numerically in the minority, we very often are not able to assess very adequately, or we accept very quickly leadership that looks like us, but then doesn't produce anything. And we will excuse it because we say, oh, well, it's their system anyway. We don't expect people who look like us to really do anything for us. So we are very slow to make very accurate assessment of that. We will give passes, and most infamously, that's what the Obama administration was. I know people are going to say, oh, she's going to start from the beginning. Yes, from the top of this class, that would be a great non-emotional assessment to make. Obama is a perfect example. I use him because you guys all know who he is. It was a perfect example of someone who looked like us, who had African origins, but actually when we measure it, right? When I ask people what policies did he actually produce that protect the lives of African people, there's not one a person could mention. There's not one on the books, but politicians create policy and legislation. You mean to tell me he did not create one policy to protect our lives when people are losing their lives simply because they are identifiably African and Black on the streets? You mean to tell me not one policy? Fast forward, we can see the contradiction, right? Because now we can see people saying, Biden, just for example, just created policy that protects Asian people. And that wasn't even a long, protracted struggle. A policy, legislation that specifically protects Asian people in America. Only after 1 year of, directed attacks against them. Can you imagine people who have had 500 years of directed attacks against them, being African people, Black people in the Western Hemisphere? No policy to date. The conversation around policy is like, well, we can't create policy only for you all. Well, we're the only ones who have a certain history here. So we're slow on understanding when someone isn't working for us, doesn't qualify. We get caught up in symbolism very often. And for the work that you're doing in I Love Black People, you can't be caught up in symbolism. There's a concrete difference between a business or institution that will put your life in danger and one that would not. Right? I discussed this with the co-founder of I Love Black People when we created some of the qualifiers and just the parameters around what makes certain places Black friendly and safe for us as Black people. It's the difference between an establishment that will call the police on you and one that wouldn't. That's not an esoteric thing. Okay. A business that will do that to you is willing to put your life in jeopardy, okay, for something that is not a life or death situation. And so, we have to understand how to qualify these things. If you are qualifying, healthcare practices or healthcare institutions or organizations or networks, there are certain qualifiers. You need to be astute, and which is why the last two outcomes is to be able to what? The ability to qualify again everything before declaring it substantial or beneficial to African people, Black people, locally and globally, okay? So I'm sure you see all the little comments popping up. Can you guys still see the screen, the syllabus? You should be able to, right? Yes? Administrator, can you just let me know that you still see the screen? Hello? Can you still see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure because I'm having a lot of stuff pop up from the WhatsApp group and it's showing up on my screen, but I just want to make sure you still see the screen. Okay,
yes,
so the seminar themes are Pan-Africanism, unity, and the term Pan-Africanism means African unity, unification of African people. As a primary organizing tool, weapon, and strategy for eradicating racism and xenophobia against African Black people. Two, the historical role, importance, and use of the dialectical conversing discourse sharing relationship between African and Black people globally as an effective strategy and tactic in combating white supremacy, racism, and xenophobia, which is a global pandemic. Three, synthesizing and application of Pan-Africanist thought, speech, and action in everyday scenarios and challenges. Four, the role of education, specifically history, in eliminating ignorance, divisiveness, propaganda, and individualism amongst African and Black people in the effort to achieve Pan-Africanism. Five, global Pan-Africanism, the unification of African people for the purpose of eradicating exploitation and oppression, is a direct solution to the condition of African and Black people. So those are some of the seminar themes. The concept around Pan-Africanism is precisely this. We think that our task is to simply fight the others who are against us. And the truth of the matter is that our struggle is the struggle for unity, our unification, our conscious and deliberate unification across ethnic, religious, cultural boundaries that we may have, particularly as a result of colonialism and imperialism. Our unification across those boundaries produces unity, right? So our unification across those boundaries produce a sort of unity that protects us and insulates us. So it's, you know, it's a complex yet very simple concept. Our unity is the key to unlocking our oppression. We think that our task is to fight off the others. Our real task is to unify so that we are in a block and we move in unison, in conjunction together with consistent values and principles that are sustainable for us and that protect us. I'm going to get more into that so you can understand, you know, so we can have more of a concrete understanding of that, but that's just the sort of light version of what that means, okay? And then you will see right here the introductory lecture, which this is what that is, an ideological training seminar. So that's me explaining what I'm doing right now. And the first item on there, as you see, is The Journey of Man, the Genetic Odyssey. It's available on YouTube, and you just click that link or you cut and paste it and it'll take you to the film. So you can watch that in entirety, and that is part of what you will be doing this week. Along with that, on the 8th, which is Monday, you will get the readings that you see here. Booker T. Washington, Africa, The Making of Pan-Africanists. It's actually this book that I showed. You will get a couple of chapters from there, but the first chapter is on Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanists that engaged Booker T. Washington. And the reason why I use that is specifically because it revisits a period in time in history where Pan-Africanism is budding in the world. It is a new concept. It is being constituted. And there are a number of people and African people around the world who are contributing to that idea, concept, what will become a movement, an ideology, perhaps. And if we can commit to there being certain practices that came along with it. So I recreate, and I could probably use other texts, but I know for sure that in that chapter, I recreate that context, right? So if we were to talk about 2020 and 2021, the person would have to write about what was happening at that moment, politically, socially, economically. You know, you would recreate the climate of what a pandemic produces, what the political landscape was like, what the social landscape was like, things that were going on in the world in order to understand this moment. Well, that is what this chapter does, almost without exclusion, because it includes, you know, the Caribbean and the African continent all together in terms of coming together and understanding that there was a common interest for us worldwide. Okay. And so that you will receive that chapter. I usually send the materials out on Monday night, and you have all week to read them, and then we discuss them on Saturday, and I give a lecture. The other materials are also on the first Pan-African Conference, 1900, and I revisit that. And I think there is a document that coincides with that I use too. I'm going to double check because we do the Pan-African Congresses. So you can see, you know, just basically the schedule, you get those documents, and there's another film that we use towards the end, and then we're done at the end of the month. So this goes pretty quickly. I'm going to stop there because you guys probably want to ask me a couple of questions, and I'm almost 10 minutes over. I'm about 8 minutes over, so I'll stop there. And if you want to ask me any questions really quickly, we can do that, and then I'm gone. You're welcome. Thanks for that submission. Okay. It would be nice to consider the platform used to share information besides the apps. A lot of times. Oh, hi, Sister Denise. Hi, Denise. Okay. Hello. On to. Okay. Victoria, you have to ask them about what's the next step for you. I mean, as an ambassador, if that's what you're asking about. Okay, so I don't think that. So Victoria, the administrators, could you make sure Victoria Hayford is added to the group so that she can see all the materials for this course?
Okay, I'll make sure that she's going to be added.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sister, this is fine. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, too much. I mean, we're certainly human. Victoria, if you've been in the cycle before, then you watched it before. So that means that you've taken the course before. So you have to talk to the administrators about that, whether or not you already completed, because yes, I do tweak it, but this is like a 4-week course. All right, so if you're seeing some of the same stuff again, or you're right back in the course again, then of course, yes, it's a course. So it doesn't, I tweak things, I change things, but that means if you saw this film before or anything related to it, that means you've been in the course in the last couple of months, right? And since I've tweaked it, because we do pretty much a class a month, a whole cycle in a month, okay? So you might want to find out from the administrators what's next for you as an ambassador. It may be just for you to go and do the work now as an ambassador of I Love Black People, because you've done all the other work in terms of the ideological development and, you know, some enrichment courses that we have, like the healthcare course. So yeah. Okay, so Zoe is trying to explain, yeah, what happens after you take the course. Right. Okay. Okay, so if no one has any questions. We have no questions, then I think that's it. Yes, Europeans have only been around 7,000 to 8,000 years. Yes, they're very young. They're the most junior people on Earth. They are not old. They are very young, and therefore they should not be leading us anyway. So that being said, I think that's it for now. Please watch the film. That is the first task ahead of you. And then the dates, I said the dates weren't on there, but the dates are already plugged in the syllabus. The syllabus is already in the groups. So you know what you have to do. coming up, and the readings will be shared Monday night, and we'll take it from there. Okay. I think that's it for now. It's been a pleasure as usual. I look forward to seeing you all next week. And I think that's it. If no one else has any other questions, thank you very much. Okay. I am because we are.
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you so much,
Okay.
Dr. Tyrone Wright. Enjoy the rest
You're
of your
welcome.
weekend.
All right. Thank you. Stay safe, everyone.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. That's the end of our lecture. Enjoy
Okay,
the
thank
rest of your day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.